I know what you did next Xmas. A bit early for that, but alright, let's go. This episode was probably considered one of the more anticipated episodes of the season, with myself and many others excited for the return of Robot Santa, but that's really the only thing I can say about this episode going into it. It has only that as a draw. That's not a bad thing, of course, but there was just one thing I was waiting for when I hit play. Honestly, this was probably one of the only episodes I had neutral feelings about going into it. I was really excited for Parasites Regained and Children of a Lesser Bog, but dreading how the West was 1010001 and the upcoming episode Rage Against the Vaccine. This episode didn't really advertise any highly anticipated follow-ups from plot points in previous seasons, or fresh off the grill social commentary that I'm not at all interested in, just a side character that I like. Though going into it, I had heard a few other people say that this was their favorite episode of the revival so far, so that did pique my interest a bit. Is there more to this episode than just Robot Santa? Is it actually the best so far? We'll get into that. This synopsis and review of the new Futurama episode will contain spoilers, so if you haven't watched it yet, go do that, then come back. I think I brought this up once in a previous review, but the little jingles and remixes they've been playing in the theme song in the intros of these new episodes have been pretty cool. I'm also a fan of how they got a Christmas-themed cartoon for the screen that the Planet Express ship crashes into. I like the opening few minutes of this episode quite a bit as well. I was happy to see Axel, Mandy, and Newt helping decorate the headquarters for the holidays. It's nice to see the kids around from time to time. There were also some pretty funny things I noticed in the scene as well, such as Hypnotoad topping the Christmas tree and Nibbler's worms having their own stocking. After they decorate, things have to get serious as they secure the perimeter, so they can be safe from Santa Claus. After the area is secure, Bender receives a Christmas card in his stocking. It contains a cryptic message reading, "I know what you did next Christmas." The show does something pretty clever here. To explain Robot Santa to new viewers, they show a kids movie to Axel, Mandy, and Newt that covers everything anyone might have missed. They explain how Robot Santa was created in the year 2801 to be able to deliver presents to everyone at record speed. But there was something wrong with his naughty or nice chip, so he just started massacring everyone he came across. The professor comes up with an idea to make Robot Santa nice again. His plan is to reverse the polarity of the naughty or nice sensor, but present Santa is always on guard. He's going to go back in time to when Santa was easier to sneak up on, back to his creation in 2801. They used the same time machine from the late Philip J. Fry, but now it can travel both directions in time instead of just forward. He decides to carry out this mission alone, to prevent the chance of anyone becoming their own grandfather. Again, of course there are a few questions that need to be sorted out, such as whether or not the Planet Express building even existed 200 years ago. Apparently it did, but it used to be a butcher's market.
But back then, it was some kind of meat market, where butchers would hook up and grind their sausages.
No, Hermes, don't say that. The professor manages to go back in time and complete the task successfully. As he gets back into the time machine, he keeps going back in time, getting sucked into the Big Bang, but appearing just fine seconds later at the end of time. Futurama reminding us all that the best way to implement time travel into your story is by making it make no sense at all. The professor returns to the present and tells everyone the good news. When the crew realizes Santa is no longer trying to hunt them down, they decide to go home and spend the holidays with their loved ones. We get a little bit of dialogue here that I was a huge fan of. Both Professor Farnsworth and Leela invite Fry over to their place for the holidays. He agrees to go to both, but it was nice that we actually saw Professor Farnsworth acknowledging Fry as his uncle. Everyone goes home to their families, except for the two that don't have any family, Bender and Zoidberg. Zoidberg wants to spend time with Bender, but Bender initially declines. After spending some time alone, however, he is more receptive to hanging out with Zoidberg. Zoidberg brings over eggnog so potent that he and Bender get drunk off the fumes. They get so drunk that they decide to use the time machine to go back to last Christmas and kidnap Santa to ruin their friend's holiday. They somehow manage to pull this off and stow Santa away in a meat locker, but he quickly breaks out. As Santa goes to exact his revenge, he slips on the eggnog and gets electrocuted by Christmas lights. When they realize he's dead, they see a similar ominous message written in the fog on the window. "I still know what you did next Christmas." We get a few scenes here of each family making their turducken recipe, while Bender and Zoidberg try to hide Santa's body. While the rest of the Planet Express crew are hanging out with their families, they realize that they feel bad for Bender and Zoidberg, and decide that they are going to surprise the two at headquarters. When they knock at the door, Zoidberg tries to hold them out, to keep them from learning that they had killed Santa, but Leela kicks in the door. They manage to conceal the body of Robot Santa by using his head as a punch bowl and his body as a beer cooler. Hubert begins asking too many questions though. He is dealt with accordingly. As the crew sits around the fireplace, waiting for Santa to arrive, Zoidberg almost confesses but is stopped by Bender. At that moment, Robot Santa arrives, not bringing gifts, but instead violence. The professor realizes that when he went back in time and reversed the naughty and nice sensor in Robot Santa, he is the one who made him evil all those years ago. As the crew is cowering in fear, Bender and Zoidberg from the past appear in the time machine and kidnap Robot Santa. They realize that they aren't villains, but instead heroes. The episode ends with Bender wondering who's been leaving him all those creepy notes, when the head of Robot Santa, being used as a punch bowl, speaks up. He knew that Bender became friends with Zoidberg on Christmas, and is now blackmailing Bender. Just like that, the episode ends. There is a post-credit scene I will mention. Kwanzaa voiced by Coolio the Rapper, sings a parody of 12 Days of Christmas before riding off into the sun, with the episode being dedicated to him. He unfortunately passed in September of last year, so this was probably one of, if not the last thing he recorded. I liked this episode quite a bit. It was well paced, and the plot kept me entertained all throughout. This episode was also quite funny. Foremost, it was a great character-driven episode. I liked how they brought all the crew and their families together. The choice to have the professor quote-unquote fix the problems with Robot Santa early on in the episode, so everyone is carefree until it comes back to bite them towards the end, was a great one. Leaving Bender and Zoidberg to their vices, allowing them to interact, was also fun. This is the first time the two characters have really done anything together, and it's absolutely hilarious that the first time they do anything together, it results in a murder. The fact that Robot Santa was foreshadowing something ominous, but at the end it's revealed he's just blackmailing Bender because he became friends with Zoidberg, is pretty funny. I was worried that this might be foreshadowing a more serious change to the series, but I'm glad it was something menial like that. There were some gems of jokes that popped up in the episode other than that as well. Santa accusing Mandy of being the most evil, the callback to Fry becoming his own grandfather, and the turducken scenes all made me laugh. There are a few things I don't like about this episode, but they're pretty minor. I understand that when a show incorporates most of its characters, they're going to be spread thin. I wasn't a huge fan of how little screen time many of the characters had to fit everything together, but considering what was going on, I do understand it. While the professor is in the time machine, they try to pay homage to the episode The Late Philip J. Fry, but things are out of place, and I think it was done rather poorly. This is also more so an overarching complaint of the season. There were hints to this in the episode Children of a Lesser Bog. This complaint has to do with the characterization of Leela, and how she's changed from the original run. There have been several jokes about her being an alcoholic throughout this season, and that's not really a flaw that fits her character too well. This complaint falls under the umbrella of the new season not quite getting their characters right, which is the most common complaint I hear about this season and agree with. I'm going to go ahead and say this episode was a solid 8, maybe 8.5 out of 10. The plot wasn't quite as compelling as some of my favorites from this new season. I can't really say that I'm all that excited about where Futurama is headed next, or what they'll do next. For starters, the next episode is a COVID one. You all know what I think about the COVID episode. You know how I expect it to turn out. If you don't, terribly. I would honestly skip this episode if I didn't have this YouTube channel, but I'll be here to review it, so be sure to subscribe. This is my review of last week's episode if you want to go ahead and check that out. See y'all later.